A night of heartbreak for Toronto FC fans as they fall to the Seattle Sounders, who were crowned the MLS Cup champions. You can still see remnants of blue and green confetti following their celebration right here at BMO Field. And this game, I mean, if it were to end in regular time, Toronto FC was certainly the better side. The Seattle Sounders never even registered a shot on target through 120 minutes of play. And yet the turning point in this match came in the 108th minute, a save on Josie Altidore.
Yeah, we can talk about that, and that will be the story that will be told coming out of this match, that Toronto FC was the better side. 19 shots to 3, you're right, not a shot on target for the Seattle Sounders. But this MLS Cup was defined by one moment, and it had to be Stephen Fry, a former Toronto FC goalkeeper, did in it. And that was an all-world save. One of the best saves I've ever seen, period, end of story. On Josie Altidore, Toronto FC did everything right in the build-up on that play. Ricketts to Altidore. Josie hung in the air, and he just tried to place it in the corner, and he did oh so well. But for Stephen Fry to leap in the air and hang and reach behind him to claw that ball out of the goal, I mean, he was worthy of the MLS Cup MVP with that one save alone, because that was the defining moment. That will be the lasting memory of this MLS Cup.
Terry, if you could break this down technically, how did that ball not go in?
It was incredible. It was TFC's best move of the game. Beitashour picks it up. It's a great angled run from Ricketts to get him behind. That's what he brought when he came on, that little bit of pace to get trouble Marshall and Torres, and then he stands it up for Ricketts. Ricketts goes up like a salmon. He hangs in the air, uses a pace from the cross, just feels it into the top corner. He's beaten Fry. Fry reaches back. Wheels described it really well. He claws it out of the top corner. He almost dislocates his shoulder. It is an unbelievable save. And you know what? He's been doing it all playoffs. So credit to him and credit to the Seattle Sounders, and congratulations.
Well, football can be a cruel game. This game was not going to end in extra time. It went to penalties. And Gareth, you had an interesting statistic. You said that the team that scores first 60% of the time, typically they go on to be crowned the champions. That was not the case today.
Yeah, they took an extra shooter as well. Sports are cruel. It's the way that things play out. There has to be a winner and a loser, and it's just unfortunate that the two players who missed penalties for Toronto FC, Michael Bradley and Justin Morrow, have been two of the biggest contributors getting Toronto FC to this point. Justin Morrow, for me, was the best left back in Major League Soccer all season long, and Michael Bradley had more completed passes and more touches than any other player on the field tonight. The captain, the general, was immense. You can make the argument he was the best player through 120 minutes on the field. It just happens. There has to be a winner. There has to be a loser. And penalties, anything can happen, Danielle. Some people say that they don't like them, that games shouldn't end that way. Look, when you play 120 minutes, players are cramping up. They could barely carry on any longer. It just has to be settled that way. Terry can speak to it. You've been in penalty shootouts before. It's a difficult way to end, but it's football for you. That's it.
And the pressure is amplified in a moment like that. You look at Michael Bradley, just takes a stutter step in an instant like that. Justin Morrow leans back just half an inch. Really, if you break it down, it could have gone either way.
Yeah, and it's just frustrating, and you know, he just leans back more a little bit. That's enough to put it off the crossbar. And when Torres, who was excellent on the night, steps up, you know what, he was always going to score. TFC couldn't have done anything else. The players played their hearts out there. They gave anything. The Seattle Sounders weren't going to score. I wouldn't say they parked the bus, but they came here. They were extremely organized. The two center halves were excellent. Just in front of them, Roldan and Alonso, they did their jobs. Their fullbacks stayed close to them. When they needed to defend, they did. And it's just TFC, if there was only... We're the only team that we're going to win in regular time, in extra time. Seattle were almost playing for the penalty shootout, and they got there, and what else can I say?
Fitting that it was Roman Torres to score the game-winning goal for the Seattle Sounders. I mean, he was sidelined with a knee injury all the way from fall last year to August this season, so it has been a long time coming for him specifically. Now, for Toronto FC, a lot of fans were wondering, why did Greg Vanney sub off Sebastian Giovinco? Here's your answer.
Yeah, he couldn't move. He looked at me. It's not like I take him off because I want to. I look at him and he gives me the sign that he can't go anymore. And when he feels like he can't go, then he feels like he's more of a liability to the group than anything. And so that's the decision. It's not one that I generally want to make, but we had to.
Sebastian Giovinco has played such a key role in Toronto FC even getting to this point of the season, the MLS Cup final. He is a true competitor, but sometimes, Terry, you can't go, you really can't go.
Yeah, we 100% would not be stood here if it wasn't for Giovinco. Tonight, he'd run himself into the ground. He'd run himself ragged. Greg Vanney had a big decision to make. Do I take Giovinco off? Do I change the system? I need to get Tosaint Ricketts off that field. And I think he made a bold move and the right move. 5 minutes before he took Giovinco off, I looked over at him. His hands were on his hips. He was knackered. He was done. Maybe you would have liked to keep him on to take a penalty, but bringing on Tosaint Ricketts changed the game. He created the Altidore chance. He ran in behind the center halves. Ricketts was excellent. I would have liked to have seen him on a little bit longer, but look, I totally stand by Greg Vanney's decision. And you know what? Giovinco ran his heart out tonight as well.
Yeah, I just want to pick up on that. There's going to be those out there who will play revisionist history. Just remember, Tosaint Ricketts went off the post late. He was inches away to being the hero on the night. And if he scores that chance, then we're not having this conversation. Look, it's always difficult to take off your top penalty taker in Giovinco, but if Greg Vanney says he couldn't go anymore, that Seba acknowledged he couldn't go, then you take the coach's word for it. Greg spoke eloquently. He was gracious in defeat afterwards, and these are the sorts of things that happen in the game of football. I thought Giovinco had a real tough go on the night, not because of anything of his own doing. Full credit to Roman Torres and Chad Marshall. The two center backs for the Seattle Sounders were huge on the night. They didn't give Giovinco or Josie Altidore any space to operate. Without those two center backs playing the way that they do, the game doesn't even go to penalties in the first place.
Well, I mean, that's something Greg Vanney was so vocal on the sidelines for the entire duration of the game. He kept going over to the fourth official and feeling as though that his team was hard done by for those exact reasons.
Yeah, one thing you do ask for as a player is consistency from the referee. It almost felt like there was a mandate from the league, let the boys play. But you know what? If fouls are being committed on Giovinco at full pace, it doesn't take much contact for you to go over. Those are fouls. You have to call them. And just speaking about performances a little bit, I just like to talk about Jonathan Osorio, who came in for Will Johnson. I thought on the night he was excellent. We saw a different side to his game. He backtracked. He worked his socks off. In a very congested midfield, he found a little bit of space. He linked up with Cooper well, and his wheels touched on. I thought Michael Bradley was excellent tonight. I was gutted for him when he missed the penalty. I thought, bar fry, he was the best player on the field. And you know what? It was so hectic in the middle of the park, but you saw his class.
Yeah, one more thing. I mean, we could go around throwing out a lot of compliments. The back three, I mean, Jordan Morris was a story coming into the game, not so much. We barely said his name on the night. Same thing with Nico Ladero. I thought the back three played excellent. Just in terms of the officiating, yeah, for me as well, it was inconsistent. And it was very difficult for me to watch the best player in Major League Soccer not getting the calls, not getting the respect that he deserves. I think that's an absolute talking point. The intensity on the field was incredibly high. It was a typical cup final with not much room to spare. Both teams were pressing high early, and it really took both teams out of the flow of the game. I thought both teams, quite frankly, more so the Reds, fed off this atmosphere tonight. I mean, I had people texting me throughout the games that don't typically come out to a Toronto FC matchup. They said the atmosphere and the intensity inside the stadium was nothing that they've ever experienced, and they felt grateful that they were here to be part of the experience tonight. It was just a memorable night, and that's something, whether it was tonight, whether it was across this playoff run, this city, this Toronto FC community has come together, and they look better than they ever did, and they look great over the course of their 10-year history of this franchise. It's very special what they've been through together, and it bodes well for the future.
I don't think I could have even said that any better. Gareth, very well said. Toronto FC took the nation by storm. I think they inspired generations of soccer fans, future soccer players for the Canadian national team. I was walking through the tunnel just after the game had finished. I saw this little kid. He was probably about 7 years old, and he said, one day I hope to be out there doing the exact same thing.
Brilliant. And you know what, any young Canadian kids out there, or anyone who loves soccer, how can you not be inspired by this? And I think men's soccer in Canada needed a stimulus, and credit to Toronto FC for giving Canada soccer this. And you know what, we might have failed at the final hurdle, but there's always...
Yeah, and not every storybook ends with a happy ending, but I hope that everyone involved, from the fans to the players to everyone working for the club, just comes away with from this with a whole lot of pride. They have a lot of reason to be thankful and proud for what they've accomplished here.
Wheels big picture this season is a massive win, isn't it? Undoubtedly.
Well, when you walk into the Toronto FC locker room, there's a list of objectives on the side of the door. Essentially, they checked off every single box this year. The one thing that's missing is the MLS Cup Finals. The good thing, however, there's a bitter taste left in their mouth. And you know what? They're going to be reporting back for preseason for 2017 just about 6 weeks from now. So the turnaround is going to be rather short. We want to say thank you so much to you, the fans, for being dedicated, not only just this season, for the past 10 years. We're so happy that you guys were along for the ride. We'll cap it off on Tuesday when the players have their locker clean out, so we will see you guys then. Keep it locked at torontofc.ca.